Stuart Nash.
Mr Chair, I'd like to speak to Part 2 of this bill and mainly clauses 6 Part 3 and 10 Part 1DA. This talks about the schedule, which Part 1DA talks about the Schedule 8, which sets out the text of the Infrastructure Bank Agreement, as Mr Goff has alluded to. But I would just like to say to Mr Tabuteau, I know that you're not in agreement with this bill and you're not supporting our membership of this bank. If the New Zealand First is ever in a situation where they have the power to withdraw New Zealand's membership, it can be done. So there are clauses under Chapter 7, withdrawal and suspension of members, where a member can withdraw simply by delivering a notice in writing to the bank that we're gone. You get 6 months, and you're still liable for all the liabilities and promises that a country has made. But the bottom line is I could not see a case where New Zealand would withdraw from such an agreement, especially when you look at Schedule 8 and the Articles of Agreement, why it is being undertaken. If you look at, for example, Schedule 8, the Articles of Agreement of the Asian Infrastructure Bank, one of the main ones is to remove the financial bottlenecks faced by individual economies in Asia and will complement the existing multilateral development banks to promote sustainable and sound growth. So this isn't saying it's an either or, that a country applying for money for this bank has to choose between this bank and the Asian Development Bank, World Bank, IMF, etc. This is just filling a gap that is perceived to exist, well not perceived, is acknowledged it does exist. But when we talk about New Zealand's membership, and this is what Clause 10 does, Clause 3 does, approval is also given to New Zealand Government to become a member of the Infrastructure Bank in accordance with the Infrastructure Bank Agreement. There are a number of reasons why we would join this. And we've talked about this before, but one of the things that surprises me is people have said, well, the Americans in particular have seen this as China having undue influence over the development of the region. Well, China is, the Chinese are incredibly smart as well. They understand that as citizens of the countries that are members of this bank that will draw down funds to help their infrastructure move from a subsistence living into consumerism, then the Chinese ability to service that and the Chinese economy's ability to grow will grow along with these economies. As mentioned, we're talking about Malaysia, the Philippines, Thailand, India, Vietnam, Uzbekistan. There is massive growth potential in this region for all the countries that are investing in this bank. I mean, as I mentioned, Australia is, Great Britain is, United States isn't. They're one of the main ones. But there are a number of New Zealand companies, Mr Chair, who may actually not only be able to take advantage of the growing consumerism in these economies, but may also be able to take advantage of the infrastructure development as it occurs. We know that there are a number of New Zealand companies and consultancies that are world-leading experts when it comes to the development of geothermal energy, for example, cadastral mapping, for example, and any number of other infrastructural projects that may be required or that may come from the funding from this bank to these growing economies. The other thing also, and this is where I always agree with Mr Goff, but where I certainly do here, is we've got to stand for something, Mr Chairman. If New Zealand said, we only care about ourselves, we don't care what is going on in the rest of the world, and I'm not talking about from an economic perspective, I'm talking about a social perspective, then that would go against what I believe is a very important part of our global brand and what we actually stand for in the global market. And that is for a fairer, more equitable society. And we do know that infrastructure projects deliver the sort of social outcomes required to move people from subsistence right through to consumerism. And we only have to look at China to see that what a developing economy can achieve in the space of a very short period of time. And this is, as mentioned, this is what we stand for. And the economic benefits to New Zealand of membership, as one organisation used to say, there are benefits in membership. And I think the benefits in this agreement, Mr Chair, or being a member of this bank, far outweigh the costs. And Mr Tabuteau, and well, not only Mr Tabuteau, a number of speakers have talked about the cost. And it is only, I think, 156 million, Mr Goff, over 5 years. Yep. As Mr Goff pointed out, it's less than we're spending on the flag referendum. So the cost to New Zealand is minimal per year. The cost to New Zealand is minimal, but I think the economic benefits are absolutely substantial going forward.
Fletcher Tabato.